Welcome to rainy Louisiana. We'd like to, first of all, I'd like to welcome Shannon, who is now here as our recording secretary. Would you please take the roll call?
Yes, ma'am. Ms. La Rivera?
Here.
Dr. Baker?
Here.
Ms. Chasson?
Here.
Ms. Gonzalo is excused. Dr. Houston has a proxy. Ms. Fields?
No,
Dr.
Dr.
Houston.
Houston.
Dr. Houston's here.
I know I wasn't supposed to be.
Okay, all right.
Don't confuse her.
Well, Dr. Houston is here then. Ms. Moise?
Here.
Dr. Palmazano?
Present.
Ms. Patrick?
Here.
Sister Carol?
Present.
Ms. Troxclair? You have the floor.
Thank you very much. Now I'd like to go around the room and have our guests to introduce themselves. And I'm sorry, my back is to you, but we'll start on this side.
Good morning, I'm Tiffany Crawford with the Louisiana Federation for Children. I'm Ingrid Fields with the Archdiocese of New Orleans.
Good morning, I'm Pastor Sanders with the Louisiana Council of Catholic Bishops.
I'm Sister Ann Middlebrooks with the Diocese of Shreveport.
Good morning, Christy Lou, Director of Teacher Certification.
Keith Leger, Department of Ed.
Hi, Stephanie Markham, Department of Education.
Good morning, Dr. Chauncey McGill, Department of Education.
Kenya Jenkins, Department of Education.
Daphne Fleckroy, State Ombudsman.
Shauna Sanders, State Department of Education.
Keisha Golden, Nonpublic.
Max Day, Department of Education.
Danielle Mitchell, Department of Education.
Ethan Alongside, Department of Education.
Roger Young, Department of Education.
Ken Bradford, Department of Education, Office of Career and College Readiness.
Thank you very much. I think the Department of Education wins the prize. Thanks for all you do for us and for all those in education, public and private.
Before we go
Yes.
to the next item, may I make a couple of announcements?
Yes.
All right, as Ms. Anna recognized, Shannon is our staff. She is the records administrator for Bessie, and she does a fabulous job. Our dear Jennifer was offered a business opportunity that she could not turn down, and while we miss her dearly, we are so excited for her for this opportunity. In her place is Max Dupuy. Max will be doing all of your travel reservations and such. And on that little note, the processing of travel reimbursements, that procedure is changing effective next week. They will now be using DocuSign. So all of this will be handled electronically without the need for the paper signatures and so forth. Max will be in touch with all of you next week to get those procedures taken care of. If you have any receipts, you can either hand them to Shannon and I, and we'll get them to Max, or you can hold on to them and scan them in with all your other paperwork. Whichever you feel is more secure for you're getting that little task checked off your to-do list. All right, back on you.
Okay. We will now move to the election of a chair. Floor is open for whatever nominations.
I nominate Anna as chair.
I second that.
Any other nominations from the floor? And I guess I will gratefully accept it. Nobody else wants it. Because y'all think I'm on my way out. Maybe one more year. Now, open up for nominations for the vice chair.
Sister Carol.
I second that.
Any other nominations? Okay, the dynamic duo.
We got the north and the south.
Our check will be in the mail.
Yes, yes,
Okay,
yes.
just make sure we get that reimbursement. Okay, hopefully you've had an opportunity to look at the minutes of our March meeting. So I need a motion to receive the, approve the minutes.
Second.
Any opposition? Minutes are as such. Okay, we'll now go to 4.1, consideration of an update report regarding the Louisiana Scholarship Program. Who's on for that?
You need a motion
I
on
think
the
we need a
floor?
motion on the floor.
To receive.
Sister Carol, second. Dr. Mayo.
Like a clicker, or do we just? Great. All right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Max Day. I am the Chief of Staff for the Office of Equity, Inclusion, and Opportunity. I am not the other Max I was just talking about. I know nothing about travel. It's actually kind of a problem, so please don't send me anything about that.
Carol was looking at you.
Yeah, I'm not.
Looking at you.
I'm like barely the scholar. I'm not the travel.
You off the hook.
And the problem is, when we start typing it in, we go Max and then the D and the D, well.
I mean, I can Google it for you. Anyway, I'm here this morning just to give you guys a brief update on the Louisiana Scholarship Program. Specifically 3 things. One, kind of just how the process went this spring. Just to be really honest and transparent about a few things that we are working to correct. 2, we're going to look at how the scholarship program has looked over time, so that we can kind of put some of the results of this application process this spring into some context. And then lastly, talking through some future improvements that we are already planning to make. And before we jump into this, like I said, I really want this to be very open, transparent, and honest about how this went, because it did not go the way that we wanted it to be very honest with you. I think a lot of you guys felt that from your colleagues and your constituents. We certainly felt that over here. Today, really, like I said, is just to get back on the same page and talk about how we can make sure that moving forward, we've addressed some of the issues that made this spring feel the way that it did. I want to take a second and introduce very quickly our scholarship team, Dietrich Golden in the back, and our newest member, Ishana Sanders, who just joined this last week. The 12th was her first day. We'll get into this in a minute about our future improvements, but that was obviously one of the things that we needed to do. We needed to staff this team. We currently have a director here in an interim capacity. Unfortunately, she could not be here with you guys today to present, so I'm stepping in for her. And now finally we have our second person on board, so we are staffed on that team and ready to respond more than we've been able to in the past. All right, so just basic numbers here. What did we see in terms of applications? We had 9,631 total applications submitted this year. That number there includes all eligible applications, ineligible applications, and then there are, I don't want to get too technical on the systems, but there's the Louisiana Scholarship System and the One App system. People can apply to both of those systems, and so there will be some duplicate applicants in that baseline number. Saying that really for those of you that want to take those 2 numbers and add them up and understand why they don't, that is why they don't. There will be some duplicates, and for a couple of different reasons, those numbers are not going to add up. But we were able to continue awards and offer new seats to 6,324 students. That's a combination of new and continuing awards. And then we were not able to award 2,292 seats. As has always been the case, every single year, we have more demand than seats. But when we understand kind of how that then translates into attrition and students actually showing up to school, matriculation. Yes?
Okay. Thank you for this report. However, I do have a question.
Sure.
My question is, I saw at the end of the legislative session another $1 million was added to the scholarship program. And then I also noted that 75% of that was moved over to the special disabilities group. So my question to you is, scholarship is the big umbrella, and under that are the seats for the students who transfer into our schools. And then the special ed division, that's a part of that too. So most of that money went to the special ed division, not to adding more seats in the schools.
So my understanding about that is that in the past, all of those allocations came together under one bucket. We had LSP, right, with the school choice program for students with exceptionalities. This year, they are separate line items, and so that 1.1 did go, not necessarily all towards SCP, but to be honest, we had to right-size the program a little bit this year, which is where we ended up this way. We had to right-size the program, and then we also had to prioritize tuition and fees in that increase, which we'll get into in just these numbers in a second, but that's why that 1.1 didn't go directly to. Okay, so as we think about how are students actually going from application to being in a seat, we are guided by the priority structure that you see here. This is in our Louisiana Scholarship Guide. This is communicated to schools, families, leaders at the beginning of the year. And when students apply for the program, depending upon their priority level, determines where they are in the random lottery process. I talk about lotteries a lot, so like that might have made sense to me and not to anybody else. Did that make sense on lottery and this priority structure very quickly? All right, so just so we can kind of put it into context, when we're looking at priority structures, I think a lot of people think about this in terms of a school. So if I had 200 students apply, right, I'm going to put them through this process just for my school. But the way that the program operates, it's actually a statewide pool. So we take our statewide pool of applicants, we filter them through these priorities in this order, right, and then we just start from the top with their random number and assign them to their schools. Given the applications that we had and the priority structure that those applications fell into, with the initial round of applications, don't put the remote in your pocket. With the initial round of applications that we had this year, we were able to get through priority number 5, around halfway through priority number 5. That meant that we were able to get to all of the students that were obviously transferring, people that were in the NSECD program. We wanted to make sure that we could prioritize siblings. Current scholarship students, we wanted to make sure that we were able to offer those continuing awards. And then obviously, our focus on school choice, applicants attending a D or F public school students transferred from a sanctioned scholarship school. Unfortunately, again, given demand and given the seats that we have, we were not able to even get through all of the priority structure. And so if you are a student that actually doesn't fall into any of these groups, you were just not going to be able to get in this year with this priority structure. Because we would still have our applicants attending a C school, and then those residing in St. Parish, and then scholarship students wishing to attend a different scholarship school. The majority of this priority structure is outlined in policy. There is also some latitude for the department to set these. So if that's a discussion that needs to be had, we can have it, but I want to let you know what the basis for that is as well. So now we've talked about total awards that were offered, how we actually filter our students through this priority structure. And now let's talk about kind of the allocation and what we did with it. So we know that there is a general pot of money that we are going to get. We know that we are responsible for paying for a lot. Obviously the tuition and fees, the audits that schools undergo. We actually do not take any funding from that allocation as like an admin fee. If any of you are familiar with how the charter school program works, the charter school office gets 2% of the charter school MFP to be able to build an office and kind of support that work, sustain that work. The scholarship program does not have that in place. So it's really important to us to, one, on the heels of the pandemic, revisit the tuition and fees conversation. Because the last time that a tuition and fees raise was given was several years ago. Second thing, we wanted to make sure that every single dollar that we had went to seats. And we ensured that through a couple of different things that we've put in place, not only is every dollar that we have going to seats in a current round, we've reinstituted a wait list and a second round placement to make sure that we are continuing to get students into these seats as quickly as we can. Okay, this is kind of what I just spoke about a second ago, but to ensure that we're maximizing the funding, we are recalculating tuition and fees based on this year's fees to make sure that we're operating with the best possible information, so that when we update those tuition and fees payments for schools, any of those extra dollars can go towards funding new seats. Additionally, as I just mentioned, we had our first round of placement, and after schools responded to that first placement and released some of those seats, or students didn't end up coming on through for whatever reason, we've taken those seats back and we are reallocating a second round right now. We expect those placements I believe went out last 2 Fridays ago, and those round 2 placements will be finalized by the 26th. So we'll know the results of round 2 on the 26th. Okay, so our LSP over time. We wanted to, again, kind of just pull together this data. So a lot of this really is us trying to figure out what are the circumstances or conditions that led to how this process went this spring. So we started with our total allocation, looking at how that has potentially changed over time. We see that back in 2017, 2018, our allocation was $1 million higher, and then that's decreased over time with a little bump this year. Applications in general have decreased in terms of the total number of applications, but so has the total awards offered. You guys will see the big drop from 20 to 21 because that is the tuition and fees increase that we find is very important to give to schools. It also, like I said, had not been done since 2017, 2018, and we heard from the field that this is something that they wanted us to prioritize. You can also see the total awards offered in round 2 that says pending, but we pulled the data as of this morning. Looks like we're going to be able to offer another 396 seats after that round 1 placement, so another round is coming out. And then once we get through round 2, we will begin that waitlist process like we talked about. You'll see total student enrollment here is slightly different than the total number of awards. This is what we've budgeted for. We have a cushion. These students will obviously be placed into round 2. They'll be placed on the wait list. We will extend that, but that is why those two numbers are different right now. Okay, before I jump into what we're doing next, questions about, actually I don't even know if that's appropriate. I haven't presented to this group. Is now time to stop?
I do have a question.
Sure.
If you look at the number of applications between 2017, 18, and 21, 22, that's 94%. But if you look at the awards, it's 76%. I think that's why we're feeling, with parents calling our offices and calling our schools, upset that they didn't get in, because it's not consistent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I hear what you're saying there. I think I'm not making this up as much as it sounds right now, I'm just trying to figure out where we're going. But the choices that we had to make, again, went back to our tuitions and fees. They went back to the program as a whole. If you look at the program size in general, we are actually able to increase the program by a number of seats, right? Where we actually saw the biggest dip is going to be that tuition and fees. We were able to maintain the program. We were actually able to grow the program, and we have come back with our wait list and our lottery, or not our wait list, our round 2 placements and our wait list, to make sure that that number does eventually go up. So there's less of a disparity between that 90.
Okay, so maybe I'm not reading this right, but total student enrollment of 67, 62, and 17, 18 is budgeted at 63, 24. That's not growing the program.
You grew it from 21.
Yeah, you grew it in 1 year, but it was
Yes.
it was a kind of a little bit of a weird year, don't you
Yes.
think?
Yeah, absolutely it was. Thank you for pointing that out. We did grow up from the last year to this year.
And I would be interested to go back to 12 when we started participating. Just look at the even longer term, just historically.
Yeah.
To see how we're doing with the money too, because we were getting a greater percentage of what our tuition actually is, and than we are now. And it's just keeps getting further and further behind. The gap is widening.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, we're approaching all of this kind of like from an autopsy situation, so throw those data points out of this again, we'll add that and keep digging until we kind of get to the bottom.
I have mine. Y'all would need to have yours. I have mine.
I'm probably the only one impacted by this, but is there any thought to taking the enrollment process from one app or Orleans Parish and putting that here with the department? So that we standardize it all?
We're having a lot of discussions about what that's going to look like next year, but it's just like the application in general and then the 2 different systems, because that has led to
A lot of confusion. A lot.
Not only for
And frustration.
For our families.
Yes.
A lot of confusion, a lot of frustration. Actually, kind of like a dispersion of responsibility in some places. Like we do need to find a better way to update this process. Another thing that we found out, just to be very candid, the people on this team, this is everybody's first time running this process. And the systems that we inherited, I think they were working at one point in time, and then all that information became housed with one person. We started making like one-off changes, and that person owns the system, right? And instead of being able to come in and take it over. Saying all that to say, revisiting everything, trying to get closer with one app, trying to update our own data systems. We'll talk about NLink in a minute, and that's like one potential avenue that we're moving towards to update those systems, but yes.
I mean, I
that's part of the
can
conversation.
count, and we can probably count on two hands, the number of people that we've dealt with the scholarship program over the course of years that we've been involved. And it's changed hands so many times that there has been very little consistency and continuity over time. It's gotten worse, and it's gotten better, and it's gotten worse again, and it's just been really difficult to keep schools engaged and involved in this program when there have been so many challenges.
Yeah, I totally get that, and we see it and we feel it, and I think that's why it's like going back to literally square one, starting all of our structures, our communication structures, our outreach, even just the engagement that we have with leaders, in schools, when we're not in schools, like really trying to go back and strengthen our relationship while also updating, because I'm very happy with this. We were not as available and accessible as we needed to be. So that is something that we are prioritizing, making sure that we have streamlined systems for parents and families in this next round, and also that schools have dedicated contacts within the LDOE that will be more accessible just through sheer capacity this next year. That is the timeliness of awards. Again, transparently, we recognize these came out too late, much too late. We will not have that same timeline moving forward. This will be run earlier in the spring so that it looks and feels closer to what it did in the past. But we know that they were late this year and it won't happen again. Communication to and from schools. I think we have our newsletters, we have our calls. I don't know if schools are finding those particularly helpful. I also know that there's a generic email box for student scholarships, non-publics, a couple of other things, and then people put it two and two together. That's just like Dieter.Golden, right, or Yashana.Sanders, and we have 5 email addresses, which is like a bunch of stuff like flying all around cyberspace. So streamlining the communication moving forward, which we'll talk about in a second. We also realize we don't have an onboarding or offboarding process for schools. So when people join the program, we're not walking them through what they actually need or our expectations. Same with closures. Like we don't actually have a strong process to collect that data from schools that are closing. We need to revamp that as well. And then lastly, we have to automate some of these processes across the board just to reduce the administrative burden both on schools and on folks here at the department, as well as families.
So with regards to communication, I'm glad that that's an area for improvement. And I'm gonna say this for the diocese, we're the contact for our schools. That makes your life easier and it makes our life easier. If the information comes to us and we are to disseminate to our schools, it's so much easier than them getting bombarded with things from the state, whereas we can reach out and touch somebody's hand if we need to help with whatever is being requested or whatever's needed.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for saying that. I think Dr. Peterson and I both have charter accountability backgrounds, and the way that we've set up charter accountability in the past has been more portfolio mindset, I think, and then also thinking about organizations more in terms of organizations and schools as sites. We do that in charter world. We don't do that enough in our non-public world.
Thank you.
Did you guys like that? All right. We've already talked about these things, but again, just increasing communication specifically to LDOE and parents. That was another area where we feel like there is a lot of opportunity for growth. We also want to, over the past couple of weeks, we've been holding informational sessions for parents to make sure that they have time and space to call in and talk to somebody at our office about their placement decisions. We want to take those same structures and move those forward, especially as we're like picking up into application season, recruitment season, and anything like that, making sure we have those spaces for families. That's an improvement we will make moving forward. And then again, just the lottery process. Can't say it enough, this needs to happen earlier. We know that students and families have got to have that information to be able to make decisions. Schools also need to be able to plan. That makes sense. As you were just talking about, Dr. Houston, just making sure we have solid contact information. It seems baseline, but this is what we need. We're going to be collecting it in the next couple of weeks. So I might reach out to you for some help to get that done. But we got to make sure that that is right. And then, like I said, make sure we have very strong onboarding processes so that even for like new managers, maybe not just new schools, but new data managers or folks that are submitting, making sure there's more training on that. We'll get through comm structures later. But that part of the presentation was really, again, just supposed to be, what are the numbers telling us? Why are we where we are? What is upcoming? What are the areas of improvement that we've identified? And then just to let you guys know that, again, we're approaching this like spirit of inquiry, autopsy. We will make this better. And that's where we are right now.
If you need our input, we can.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Melanie, I think this is our question last night. So basically what we're seeing right now, until the finality of this, is a 1% tuition increase?
Yes.
1%. Is that a possibility of maneuvering a little bit? No?
Not this year. When we looked at the allocation, we ran simulations at 5%, 2.5%, 1%. 1% was kind of the sweet spot that allowed us to offer the most seats possible and also still provide some kind of increase.
And that's across the board, that's fees, that's reimbursement.
Any further discussion?
Can I make one point?
Yes.
It's disheartening that we've not had an increase in several years because the amount of money we charge in tuition is not the actual cost of educating the children. So when we participate in the scholarship program, automatically there's a gap, right, that we have to fill with development, fundraising, support from our parishes, from our dioceses, etc. It's disheartening that the public schools get an increase in an MFP and we don't get an increase in tuition payments, yet we're held to similar standards and expected to have the same or better outcomes when we don't reap the same benefit financially from the state. So I just ask that that be taken into consideration as you all move forward and as we try to secure funding for future years, that be taken into consideration.
And when it was originated, we were told that we would get the amount of actual tuition up to the MFP, not beyond it. And that hasn't happened in a very long time. And that's a great burden on our schools. And for that reason, some of them aren't able to continue to participate. And that's heartbreaking. The families really want to be in this program.
It is very critical because I have some schools that are saying, we can no longer carry the burden of this. And if they go back to public school, there's your number. You're going to find $12,000 for them anyway, so go for it.
Yeah, you know, just standing here, I am not the finance expert at all, but I know that we can look at it and we can continue to run simulations. I do think that there is a world in which we use this group and this body, we work together more to look at kind of forecasting the future of the program, making some of those decisions about tuitions versus seats, or getting some input in a more meaningful way than I think we've done in the past. And I think that can help us in these discussions, especially when we're trying to get in the weeds of the tuition and fees. It comes down to priorities. Do we want to grow seats? Do we want to try to make people whole financially? And at the end of the day, if the pot is what the pot is, we're going to have to make those choices. But I think we can bring people in on the front end to make sure that we're aligned in making those choices.
Any other discussion? Thank you very much, Matt. Motion? Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item, update regarding the EANS program is on. Y'all all on?
Get a motion to receive.
I need a motion to receive. Lisa, second, Dr. Baker. I want to welcome Donnell, who snuck in. Welcome. He just wanted us to see you. Just to get your face, Donnell. Be careful now.
Okay.
All right, so what is being passed out is an updated deck with some updated data points that we have as of yesterday versus when we actually submitted the deck for the meeting. So I'm Kenya Jenkins. I'm with the I'm Director of Federal Support with the Division of with the Federal Support and Grantee Relations. And I'm here to give you an update on the EANS program. All right, so This first page on the deck that was passed out to you has updated information other than this slide. So when we had to send the slide in for the presentation, we had information up to 7/7. If you notice, you now have information up to 7/19. So 180 schools submitted a budget application to the EANS program. So everyone that was deemed eligible and who wanted to participate actually submitted a budget application. And that number was 180. 125 of those schools, 179 of those schools have received the notice of allowable costs following the review of their application as of yesterday, 7/19. So again, that number moved from 125 to 179. Note, once a notice is issued, schools have 3 business days to appeal that notice. So essentially, 3. So essentially, they receive a notice of everything that they were eligible for, could potentially receive, so that they had an opportunity to review that. And if they felt there was a discrepancy, if they felt that there was something they wanted to appeal, they actually had 3 business days to be able to do that. The figures in bold represent all of the 179 schools now that have received the notice and are in various stages of the review. So in review, we only have 1 application left. Notice is issued in the appeal window within that 3 business days are 19. Notices issued in appeal review are 3. Notices issued and their appeal window has expired is 157, which is a total of the 180 applications.
I have a question about the 3 days. How was it decided that they would only have 3 days in the middle of the summer when they might be on vacation?
Well, that was the importance of receiving correct contact information. That information went out through the email blast that went to each of the schools. From our contractor that helped us, the 3 days came into play for us to have a timeline to be able to allow procurement to work and procure these items so that you could have them prior to school starting, if at all possible. And so the 3 days was worked in based upon the timelines that we were working with from ED. And there hasn't been an issue with contacting people.
Because I'm having trouble getting in touch with my friends.
Yes, we knew that. Daphne and I raised that in our initial conversation with PNN, that you have to have a summer contact because the people do leave. And I remember that from just working with the program.
Well, and you want them to. They're nicer in September.
Absolutely. All right. So, with the EANS, there were 149 schools that requested reimbursements. There were 173 that requested future procurement. The types of reimbursements, we figured you may want to know what some of them were doing. So they had an opportunity to request them in a category basis, and then they drilled down to the actual requested items themselves. So if you notice, a lot of it was educational technology. A lot of it was things that our OTS had to try to procure for them. Supplies to sanitize, disinfect, clean. Materials, supplies, equipment recommended by CDC for reopening. And just other personal protective equipment, improving the ventilation systems, and including windows or portable air purification systems. Those were the categories. If you drill down, you'll notice then you have laptops, Chromebooks, iPads, tablets, laptop cases, desk dividers, hand sanitizer, disinfectant wipes, and so on, were all commonly requested items that we saw in those applications. All right, with the timeline, so there's a change here to the deck you have in front of you. 99% of the budget applications have received a notice of allowable costs as of yesterday. LDOE is actively processing and approving reimbursement requests. So for those schools that requested reimbursement, some of them have gotten payments already. As we understand, our appropriation and payments team are working on those as we speak and have been in processing. LDOE and the Office of Technology Services are actively working to procure the approved future procurement requested items. The LDOE will fulfill all eligible for future procurement requests to the best of their ability based on available, approved, and contracted Louisiana Department of Education vendors. So our kind of finance team or appropriations team has been working in tandem with our OTS team. OTS has to purchase and procure anything that is educational technology. And so then the procurement team, they are working to do all of those other items that are on the list for those schools. So again, they are actually working to fulfill and complete those requests now. And as I understand it, they actually brought on some temp staff to be able to help them with the large volume of procurement requests to try to get this done as quick as possible. The plan is that all program funds will be obligated by August 5th. Now, we want to just say with that August 5th date, that may not mean that the actual items will be at the school August 5th, but we are working diligently to at least get all of those funds obligated by that time. So note that the obligation of funds doesn't guarantee delivery of future procurement items by August 5th, as items may be delivered after this date due to availability. Between OTS and procurement, they have been working with the individual schools to have a person and a shipping address for all items that are going to be delivered, a person who will receive those items, and a person who will tag those items. So that has been communication that has been going on with the individual schools. You have a question?
I want to say y'all have done an excellent job.
Thank you.
It's very organized and the communication is quick.
It is.
And so I appreciate that.
We trying to make this August 5th timeline. We've been trying to work diligently.
It's been done very well. I would say it's safe to say that your educational licenses, IXL, AR, would be available August 5th, since those are not like items like Chromebooks and iPads.
But they're still considered educational technology, and if I understand correctly, have to be purchased by OTS.
Okay.
So that could be the delay there.
Okay.
All right, so that is the update for EANS. If you have any specific questions for EANS that need to be directly to myself or Daphne, we definitely can answer those for you, and wanted to provide you with our email address. Are there any questions about the EANS program now?
I have one, and I don't know who this goes to. We had 180 applications from schools. How many non-public schools are there? I was kind of trying to get an estimate of the percentage of schools that apply.
Right, you may know exactly, but there were over 300 that we had.
Initially.
Okay.
Oh, many of the high schools did the PPP second round.
Right, and that is
Some of our schools.
So some schools did second round PPP?
Yes, the high schools.
Yes,
especially.
a lot of my elementary schools, I was surprised how many. Yeah, it's just easy.
Yeah, just
Well, they want to give
curious.
this time.
Yeah, thank you.
I want you to go on that, get them going fast.
Oh.
Go take care of it.
All right, and Bernell wants to say a few words.
Are you going to talk a little bit about EEF before you sit down?
Well, actually, Sister Carol, I don't do EAP anymore.
Can we vote that you would?
But if you have a question, I might be able to help you out. I'm connected.
You didn't get talking permission.
I know, but she emails me anyway and I answer her questions, so it's okay. Yes, we'll talk. You can call.
Just want to say good morning again, everyone, and I really want to really commend you guys with the first iteration of the EANS program. As we said from the onset, we had tight timelines where we had to get the application set by ED, not the LDOE, that we had to get the application out to you, get your responses, and although a lot of schools made us a little nervous, because I think it was like a week and a half before the end date, we only had a little over 100 applications in. I'm like, okay, we had 180 eligible. And you guys, whatever part you played in that, everybody came through. So we're grateful for that. And so just in moving forward, as Kenya articulated, in terms of all those protocols regarding making sure that you get the services, we're not really concerned about the reimbursement piece, because if you've been approved for reimbursement, our appropriations team, they're making that a priority. But as you probably can understand, our state agency is not in the business of providing direct services to schools. So that comes with it, with all kinds of challenges, you know, in terms of procuring things, but just note that our team, we're working diligently to make sure that we can get those services provided to you in early August as possible. Just as a heads up, Ed has already, some of you probably already know, they've already put the information out regarding the next round of this. So we're going to have fun again. Two things just to make a note in case you haven't been in the loop, is one, schools must have a significant amount of low-income kids participate in the next round. And two, there will be no reimbursements for the second round. So it'll be strictly focused on future procurement.
When you say significant, what percentage are you looking for?
Well, one percentage that Ed put in what we've seen is 40.
40?
Yes.
So the second round of EANS will be for kids low income?
Yeah, you have to serve, you have to, yes. So that's going to eliminate, now we haven't, we are working now to kind of look at our data to see approximately who we'll be working with. Because in many cases, those numbers don't significantly shift from year to year. But we will be connecting with you perhaps of the next iteration of this meeting to give you more updates there. Any other things that I think, yeah. So thanks again, and we look forward to working with you. And I don't know, have we introduced Chauncey? Yes, Dr. Chauncey McElway. She's come on board with us, and she will be taking a lot of the lead work, thank God, with the EANS program. So you'll if you see an email from her or a phone call, just know she's with us. Okay?
Is it C or S?
C.
C.
Now ask me to spell the whole thing. It starts with the C.
Okay. All right, that's good.
Okay, thank you so much.
Any further discussion? Any opposition? Motion carries. I too want to just commend all the people who worked with the EANS program. I know that it was an added burden, but I think you all got our people moving quicker than we could as principals, as superintendents, because they listen to y'all before they listen to us. But I'm very grateful, and I know the rest of us are as well, so thank you very much.
And I have a question.
Okay, go ahead with your question.
Okay, we're still in the universal free lunch program for all students, and again, for this coming year. What's going to be the determinant for a school, how they're going to know, for example, if they're high in reduced lunches, because all students are eligible for free lunches.
Right, so, and there were the various means in terms of course, the diocese schools mainly use the free and reduced lunch count, so that's pretty standard. What we are clarifying now with Ed is the actual year for round 2. And so once we get that finalized and everything and get that information, we'll be able to look at the numbers. And we know that there were some challenges in terms of how we did it last year, in terms of reached out to the LEA and then we tried to work with what you provided. So we're looking just internally in terms of how we could possibly streamline that for the next iteration of this. So you'll be hearing from us.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay.
So that count will be based on what school year?
Right, that's what
This
we
year,
that's what we're finalizing with Ed. We're thinking
Okay.
it's possibly going to be 1920, but
But for now, keep in mind, the CEP schools don't do free reduced lunches.
they don't do it.
No.
Yeah, we
Okay.
have quite a
We have
few
a
that
few
don't.
CEP schools.
And I think Daphne's been working with those schools for other measures and articulating with them, how we get those things.
And one of the things,
Yeah.
that came out of it, and we're still trying to check to be sure, is the report that you normally give
to the LEAs to show the free and reduced lunch count. The principal may not be able to request that, but you as the diocesan superintendent will be able to ask your food and nutrition people to do a query to see if they can pull that information out. Right now, it looks like you're going to be able to do that. And if that is the case, then you can just ask for that for your food and nutrition person for the LEA when it's time to report that information. But it is definitely on the list to do, to finalize and be sure how we're going to do that. But thus far, it appears that the superintendents will be able to make that request, but not an individual school principal. And for those of you who do not have that food and nutrition report, you're going to do what you always do, which is send home the family income survey. And the family income survey that we have is very similar to the survey that parents fill out online for this program. And there may be maybe a couple of items that we're going to add to that family income survey, because we're using the same free and reduced lunch chart that comes from the United States Department of Agriculture that is used for all programs that need to be sure that those students and families are qualifying for free and reduced lunch. Also, homeless, if they've been in Head Start, those same things that are there. So we definitely will be doing that for the schools that do not have access to their own free and reduced lunch.
The only issue is now that they're all getting free lunch, there's no motivation for a parent to add that to their to-do list. So we get very low response because it doesn't matter to them. Because they're getting free lunch.
Well, one of the things about that, I think that's something that we can work on an individual basis, because many times prior to this, some of the private schools, independent private schools, were not related to a religious school and such. What they developed was kind of like a little campaign later, and it worked. It worked. They developed a campaign later to tell parents why they needed them to apply. And also, you know, stickers and blow pops work wonders to get them
We just
forward.
haven't,
So just little things that
we've tried a lot of things, our parents won't fill that out if there's not a reason. And they don't see it as a reason this year, so keep in mind.
Well,
We'll
we'll
do our
work
best.
on it.
Yeah.
We'll work on it.
Katie Green?
Public comment?
Yes, I come up to the front.
Yes,
Okay.
Please say that.
I'm a parent, just here to speak, so I'm only going to take 2 minutes. Thank you for giving me the time. I'm here to speak about the children and masks. Now, I know that most of the private schools and some of the public schools have already issued statements insinuating that the mask will be optional, which is great. But we all know that that is subject to change.
For the record, I need you
I'm
to
sorry.
state your name
Okay.
and your.
Katie Green, and I'm representing myself. So, okay. And I'm a parent. I also know that we're not all of the same mindset here, so I'll just simply state to make concern. I have copies of citations illustrating that these mask mandates in schools violate federal law and parental rights based off of the fact that they are issued under an emergency use authorization. I also have here empirical data for you to review that raises serious concern of the safety, physical and mental safety of long-term mask use. Logically, we all knew that prior to the current state of the world, covering a child's airways all day, every day for some of them, is not conducive to their health and well-being, seeing that breathing and immune function are intimately related. Medical practitioners have followed, experts have followed the same physiological understanding for decades that breathing fresh air is accommodating to lung health, optimal lung health, and as well a vast attempt at maintaining homeostasis. These are statistical known medical facts.
But above all, you can imagine the psychological toll that I know that all of you know these masks have had on our children. Children rely heavily on connection and facial expressions to thrive emotionally. And as child educators, you're responsible for knowing this and seeing it through. We as parents place the care of our children in your hands to help us ensure that they grow into decent, human beings. By protecting their health, their human rights, and their safety at all costs. I'm sorry, I don't ever cry, so this is weird. All of you know that health includes the mental, emotional, behavioral, and social pieces of the human experience. And it is your responsibility to take care of our children day in and day out. I understand that a lot of you say that your hands are tied, and that's probably true. I don't know how the system works in its entirety. And I think that we really are trying our best. But if we don't come together collectively as a whole and fight for what we know is best in our hearts for these kids, then this will be a country not worth living in. I'm really sorry. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We need to do, yeah, and finalize the last report. Any further discussion? None, any opposition? Motion carries. So we are now, consideration of an update report regarding acts of the Louisiana 2021 regular legislative session. Who's on? Motion to receive. Mr. Carroll, second. Dr. Mill, it's yours.
Hello everyone, my name is Ethan Malonsaw. I'm the Director of Government Affairs for the Louisiana Department of Education. I'll start off by saying if I talk too fast, I'm from down the bayou, so slow me down.
Only I can understand.
And, any questions you have, please jump in. The legislature is always going to do something quite new. So this year was a fiscal session, which means that legislators were limited to 5 bills that did not deal with fiscal issues, so taxation, those type of things. And this session was really the first time that we got to see what education issues would come up from this new legislature. Because their first session was the COVID session, we had plenty of stuff going on. Well, to our surprise, there was a whopping 90-something bills that dealt with education. One of which deals specifically with the scholarship program and non-public schools. So I wanted to go over that one with y'all. I do have a list of all the bills that were passed that deal with education. If anyone has any questions about them, happy to answer them. But primarily I want to go over this one. So this was House Bill 280, which was brought by Representative Rick Edmonds, who is a legislator here in Baton Rouge. This bill deals with student scholarships for educational excellence program. And it deals with the Department of Education's responsibilities, the enrollment cap, and the eligibility of participating non-public schools. So let's take that first one, the Department of Education responsibilities. What the law does is it requires DOE to conduct annual site visits at schools that fail to meet minimum standards. Before, we could always come do site visits. Now we are required to come if they do not meet the standards that are prescribed in DESE Bulletin. And those standards, as you all know, are in Bulletin 133, subsection 1305. The second thing that this bill does was it removed the enrollment cap. So previously we were capped at 20% enrollment. That is now removed. There is no cap. So that's gone. And then the final section is really the heaviest section that changes a lot. So this is applicable to schools joining the program in the 2022-2023 school year and then further into the future. The first is that schools must be either accredited by an accrediting entity specified in proposed law. So the law that was passed, those accrediting agencies are Southern Associations of Colleges and Schools, COGNIA, the National Association of Independent Schools, the Louisiana Montessori Association, and the Diocese or Archdiocese in which the school is located. Provisionally accredited schools will be removed from the program if they do not receive accreditation within 4 years of receiving their provisional accreditation. The second was it designated as a provincially accredited school, approved school, which means that what I just talked about, the 4 years, if you don't get it in 4 years, you're removed from the program. And then the last section is the ineligibility. So if a school fails to meet the minimum standards for academic performance for 3 consecutive school years, that school will not be eligible to participate in the program again. And that 3 years is beginning with the 2021-2022 school year. So everybody starting from 0, starting next school year, you have 3 years. If you fail to meet those standards that are listed in the law, in Bessie Bulletin, then you will not be eligible to participate in the program.
Even if you've already been in the program, everybody's starting at ground zero?
Yes. Everything's fresh start for everyone.
21, 22, or 22, 23?
21, 22.
So this year.
So this school year.
This school year.
This one coming up, correct? Because we're in
Well,
2021,
right,
2023. 2 weeks, yes. Yeah, this school year, sorry.
TikTok.
Look, I'm still on a student schedule where I'm like, it ain't time yet.
It's
So
fine.
when you said they cannot participate in the program, does that mean they can't continue with the students they have enrolled? Or does that mean they can't take new students? Because in the past, they were able, if sanctioned, no matter how many years, they could continue with the students they currently had enrolled if the parents chose to stay there. But they could not take new scholarship students. Is
Yeah.
that what it means, or does it mean?
So I'm not a lawyer, I'll caveat that. But my understanding of it, and I would think that you would ask probably your executive council to kind of read into this a little bit more. My understanding is that you'll be ineligible to the program, which means
So it would
that
be
current
current
students,
students.
you will not get a new allocation for the current
So the
students.
schools that are predominantly serving scholarship students are 100%. If they're not meeting the academic standard for 3 consecutive years, then we would effectively be shutting them down.
That's what the law does.
Okay.
Any other questions? Any questions about legislation overall? We had a couple school choice bills that went through, but I don't think they pertain specifically to non-publics. But if you have any questions, I'm always available.
What about this annual report on the scholarship program that is to be done and presented to the legislature?
So the annual audit that's done,
Well, what was,
It's a continuing resolution represents Calvin. Page
oh, for the
49.
tax credit.
No, it's a study scholarship program. It hadn't been studied in, I think, a few years. It's SCR. Am I talking out of place? I'm sorry.
You can tell Daphne, Raynell, and Raynell will tell us.
SCR 49 by Talbot requests the Department of
Yes.
Revenue and the
Yeah.
State Department of Education to jointly report on the implementation of tax credits for donations to school tuition organizations.
okay, so that's the TDC
It's,
program.
yes, that's not the,
That scholarship program,
that's
not
not
the
the
state
scholarship
scholarship.
program. It's the tax program, yeah. And that's something we're working through right now to provide, because we have to work with LDO.
Thank you so much for
Thank you. Any further
clarifying.
discussion? Any opposition? You think so? Okay, next on our, moving along, update regarding teacher certification. Ms. Bueller, you up? Bringing some good news? Motion to receive. Ms. Moline, second.
Just with that here.
Dr. Houston.
Okay.
I know, that's what I said, I called y'all for last time. Sorry.
I'm going to start by saying there's a lot in the deck that I provided. I just wanted to make sure that you had everything that was presented on the non-public school monthly meeting this past time. Make sure that you're prepared for the upcoming changes that we're having. All right, so we're going to go through a couple of different things. I've bucketed out on the agenda for certification policy update, then the proposed policy changes that we'll be bringing to Bessie in August. and then processing protocol changes, and then the last section is just certification reminders. You have seen all of those slides in the certification reminders section, just thought I'd put it in front of you again as we're fixing to start a new school year. All right, so a couple of things, you've probably seen this already if you've participated on any of our monthly calls. This is just an update around the March and April BESI meetings that we had. There were some policy changes that were approved, some mentor policy changes. The rationale behind the mentor policy changes is actually in the appendix of the deck. It speaks to honoring past experience, all of those types of things. That policy actually was approved, emergency rule, in the last 2 weeks, I believe. And then we had some practice exam changes and updates. So this just speaks to the changes that we made to mentoring policy. Again, it speaks to honoring previous training experience like EDL, NIET, class-trained observers, supervisor of student teaching. We're going to include all of those qualifications as part of the criteria that a person can hold to be a mentor. They also removed the content-specific assessments, and then we made the mentor an endorsement on your teaching certificate or an ancillary. So it can be held by someone that is certified as an educator, or by someone who does not hold certification.
Can I ask you, just for clarification, so someone that is on staff that's mentored teachers in the past with a master's in education, they're still eligible to do that? They don't have to have that mentor teacher certification?
So you do have to have the mentor teacher certification. I'm going to speak to some other things that we're bringing to the board in August that will help you out in non-public schools.
Okay.
So the practice exam updates, the big updates that were made in March were the middle school science exam. ETS revamped that exam. They did the National Science Teachers Association helped to revamp that exam. We are having an overlap. Basically, the current exam will be used until March of next year, but the newly adopted exam started back in April. So either test can be taken at this moment. And this just shows that the new exam is a 5442 and the passing score is 152. The 5440 can be used currently until March of next year. So if you have an educator that already registered for an exam, wasn't aware of this particular exam change, they can still take it. So those were the actual certification policy updates that have been made already. The next section is about proposed policy changes that we're going to bring forth to BESI in August. The proposal for August is to bring it forth as emergency rule, but as with anything, when it goes towards BESI, it's up to what they decide. So there's a lot of changes that we're bringing. We're trying to overhaul Bulletin 746 as much as possible. If you've ever taken a look at it, it's a little bit of a beast. It's kind of like a Frankenstein. It's cut and paste. You can see the change over time of different administrations, how they worded policy. So we're trying to streamline all of that and make it a little bit more clear. And then if we're going to be completely transparent, there were some conflicts within policy itself. We're just trying to clean it up a little bit. So there's 4 basic groups of changes that we're making. We're making some substantial changes. We are making some changes to create policy consistency or clarity. And then of course there's some technical changes that we're making. And then the last bucket is changes that would be in alignment with any recent legislative changes. So there's a lot. I'm not going to read all of this to you. I'm just going to highlight the bolded items here that particularly pertain to non-public school systems. But some of the more substantial changes are included on this slide. One of them is the removal of the terminology in area of certification. So for advancement from a level 1 to a level 2, a teacher has to have 3 years of experience in their area of certification to move on. Oftentimes new teachers are kind of caught in a trap. They're getting a job wherever they can get a job, teaching whatever they can teach. And so we're removing that language to try and remove that trap. If they have the effectiveness necessary, they can move on. If you're effective in whatever subject you're teaching, you can advance your certificate. This is also applicable in the OSS, the EDL 1, 2, and 3, so we're going to make that consistent across the board. The other two pieces that are probably most applicable to you all in the non-publics are we are adding a medical excuse clause in the generic policy. It was originally in the generic section of policy a long time ago. Over the years of making edits, it got left in one small section and we were only able to use it applicable to that certificate. So we're bringing that back as it was originally intended. And then we're also proposing that practitioner license submission for those certificates fall on the teacher preparation provider. Right now, it depends on the kind of practitioner teacher program as to who submits that license. So our proposal is to have it all come in one place. And that will basically align it with other pre-service type of certificates. The resident certificate, the PL, and the R and the initial certificate would all come from the teacher preparation program. So that's the proposal. Other substantial policy changes, and this is the one that I was speaking about just a moment ago. Current policy for mentor policy allows for a certified teacher or a teacher specifically teaching in a charter with 2 effective Compass evaluations can meet the qualifications to become a mentor teacher. There is nothing allowed in policy for uncertified non-public school teachers. And so we're trying to bring a proposal that would align it similar to what it is for charters, where it would say something to the effect of an uncertified non-public school educator with 2 effective local personnel evaluations would be eligible to qualify, provided they meet the other items in the list as well. So that's something that we're proposing in August as well. That was one of those things that until you all brought it to our attention, we didn't really, realize that that was a trap or a roadblock, so to speak. Policy consistency and clarity changes. Most of you all look at Bulletin 741 for non-publics, and then some of you have moved towards requiring your teachers to be certified. That's 2 different bulletins that you're having to look at. What we're doing is we're lifting the exact language from Bulletin 741 for non-publics, the specific section on certification of personnel, and we're putting that in this certification bulletin as well, so you can see it all side by side. So you have one place that you can look at where they will meet non-public standards or they can obtain certification. Other policy consistency and clarity changes, the one that will probably be most applicable to you all we're just clarifying in policy that once an educator meets non-public standards, it will no longer hold a non-public T. There seems to be some confusion out there that they will continue to hold a certificate. That certificate is only kind of a temporary certificate while they're meeting non-public standards. And so we're just clarifying that in policy. Then we have technical issues and corrections. There's a lot of duplicative language. There is, if you've ever taken a look at the PL policy specifically, it's like 4 pages, 2 columns, front and back, and it's very, very duplicative. So we're trying to streamline all of that. That's just one particular example that we're trying to streamline and remove the duplicative language. We're also reorganizing general sections, moving things so that it makes a little bit more sense and that it's more consistent in structure. Removing some outdated language around safe script paper. We don't even accept paper anymore, so we're just kind of updating all of that. Any questions before I move on? I know that was a lot, and I just kind of went through the highlights there for you all. Is there anything that you have a question about? Okay, so now we're going to talk through some of our processing protocol changes. In this deck, will they get a copy of the electronic deck?
Yes, it is uploaded in Board Docs. I sent you all that link when it went live. And so any of these hyperlinks that are in this backup can be accessed through the document on Board Docs. And if you're having trouble with it, just let me know and
I'll work through it.
So that processing protocol link there will take you to a guidance document that speaks to the protocol changes that we're going to be making in detail. So I've included that link there, but just to kind of give you some highlights on some of the things that we're going to be doing because of all of these potential policy changes and because we've gotten feedback from the field, we're trying to improve our customer service. Part of that is restructuring and breaking apart some of our applications. If you've taken a look at that certification update packet, it's about as much of a beast as the policy itself is. And so we're going to break that apart into separate different applications. We've noticed an increase in the number of errors due to handwriting, and so we're going to require all documents to be completed electronically. We realize some of you have had some issues, some technical issues with some of our documents. We're revamping those to make sure that those technical glitches, as much as we can foresee, will be eliminated. It's a little hard to troubleshoot that because people are doing different operating systems, different browsers, all of that, so we're going to do our best to try and eliminate some of that. We are going to be, some of these are because of some of the issues that we've come up with. We've had some identity issues lately as well. So we are requiring 2 forms of identification for all application submissions so that we can verify that who's applying for that particular credential is that person. So we'll be requiring a copy of the Social Security card and their driver's license with all applications. It's already required for the changing of a name, but if we didn't have it in the beginning to prove who they were, it can create an issue. So we're moving to that. We are also restructuring our fees. Our fees have not been restructured since 1989. And we are 100% self-generated funds. To be able to provide better customer service, we just have to rebucket our fees to be able to afford more specialists to assist. So we are going to be restructuring our fees as well. We are also requiring self-evaluation checklists to be included with all applications if there's one available. We feel we're former teachers ourselves, and so we feel teach a man to fish is kind of our philosophy. Feel like if you can read the instructions and we include the evaluation checklist, that will help the educator determine if they meet the qualifications ahead of time and hopefully not waste their money on a processing fee to be denied for something they didn't qualify for anyway. Most of these changes will go into effect August 1st. There are a lot of changes, so I'm going to say that with the caveat that they're going to begin to go into effect August 1st. The ones that are policy related specifically will have to make those changes after the BESI meeting, so those obviously won't go into effect August 1st. We're going to have a lot of changes in the month of August. We hope to have most of those changes, forms especially, implemented by September 1st, but we'll keep you all updated with the date that will require new applications and all of that. Some of the other processing protocol changes include a new office hours process. For those of you that are familiar with our office hours process, you go in and you schedule at a time convenient to you, and you just type in, hey, we have a question about certificate number 543621. We communicate with you verbally over the phone. Well, sometimes if you are or if you aren't taking notes, there could be some confusion or some lost in translation type of issues. And so what we're asking with the processing protocol for office hours is sign into your HR account, go to the Ask a Question feature, and choose the subject as office hours, and then type in your questions there. If it's for certificate 613542, or if it's for an OS, or if it's for a non-public hire, what have you, type those questions there, click submit, and then go schedule your office hours appointment. Your office hours appointment, you would just put that one case number that you received for that question that you submitted in the office hours ticket. That would allow us to preview all of the information. Of course, we know things come up between the time that you schedule. You can add those along the way, but that will have a place where we can communicate with you in writing, whatever our guidance is, so that you'll have something from us in writing. So that's the change that we're asking. And that's detailed out in that processing protocol change document that's linked at the top there. We also have a new appeals email address. Historically, emails have gone to paula.bell. We have a new generic email address that all of them are going to go to, so anyone from the certification team can access that. That is in place already. We hope to be able to increase our customer service by decreasing our processing time, increasing our clarity on our written feedback. We'd also like to be able to provide additional services. Those changes about providing additional services will come in the future. It won't all happen August 1st.
Christine, sorry. Do they already have the new email address for appeals?
Yes, it's certificationappeal@la.gov.
And that's just for like
Just for appeals,
TCAP and,
you know, just for appeals.
appeal or appeals?
Appeal, no S.
Okay.
Yes. At la.gov, yes ma'am. The applications that are going to be broken apart, we talked about the certification update application packet being a bit of a beast. That's going to be broken into 3 separate packets. We're going to do a packet that is specific to renewals, hires, or status changes. Status changes would be like non-practicing status, operational role, name change. That's all include a status change. So that one application is going to cover those types of transactions. Then we'll have a separate application for an evaluation, for add-ons, or for course approval, adding a degree, those types of things. And then the last piece will be certification or exam verification. So that one application packet will be broken into 3. We will have that link, like if someone saves that old link, there will be a blank page that says, hey, go to the new, these are the 3 applications. That will be on our site as well. But you will no longer see a link specifically to certification update application packet as of August 1st. The ancillary application will also be broken into 3 different packets. We've already taken care of the mentor, teacher, content leader section. Because that one was recently changed, it can be an endorsement or it can be an ancillary, we decided to make it its own packet all by itself. So it's no longer a part of the ancillary application packet. If they're requesting mentor, teacher, or content leader, they're going to go to that mentor, teacher, content leader application in and of itself. The rest of the ancillary application will be broken into 2 sections. Ancillary teaching, so for like your ancillary artist or for your ancillary math for professionals, any of those teaching type of certificates will be on that ancillary teaching application, and then ancillary services will be like your ed diagnostician or a school nurse, those types of things will be in the ancillary services section. We do have one application packet that we're going to combine actually. We currently have an OS, or an out-of-state application, and a foreign OS. It's essentially the same application, so we're putting that together. Whether you're out of state or out of country, you'll just apply on the OS. Here's our rebucketing for our processing fees. Basically, what happens is if it was in the free bucket, it's moving to the $25 bucket. If it was in the $25 bucket, it's moving to the $50. If it was in the $50, it's staying in the $50. And this just kind of lists out specifically what types of applications or transactions will be in each bucket. Keep in mind a name change, it's going to be a freebie on any application, but if it's the only application or the only request that you're making, it will be in the $25 bucket. Part of that processing protocol change document that's linked here also has the updated fee schedule as the 2nd or 3rd page on that document. It's not posted on our website yet individually because we don't want to create any confusion. But in time for August 1st, we will have that updated fee schedule posted in place of the old. If any application is received and complete in our online portal on or before August 1st, it will be subject to our current fee structure. If it's received after that, it will be subject to the new fee structure. So not just the payment has to be done before, it has to be the whole entire completed application. And then the last section is the certification reminders that you've seen all of those. If I need to go through any of those, I absolutely can do so. But it's about duplicate submissions, singles, those types of things. So I'll let you take a look and see if there's anything in there that you have questions about. Keep in mind, I know that mentor teacher is a relatively new application type and credential. Certification is evidence or document-based. If they meet the qualifications, we typically need a document associated with it. So if they're NIET certified, we need that certificate. If they're NBCT, we need that certificate, those types of things. This is just
Just a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there anything in the system or the operator who does this that you fully understand that in the non-public school, there is absolutely no way we're going to go through a compass evaluate? We're not going to do any of that because many times ours get sent back because there's no compass, whatever. There has to be an understanding that's not a part. That's why we have that little star beside our letters.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We have recent policy updates made to allow for local evaluations for renewal of the asterisk certificates. And so typically that's what we're going to be looking for. We do have a form that's associated with that. We don't need the actual evaluation. We would just need you to attest, this year, this subject, this rating. This is what our scale is, ABC, 1, 2, 3, star, happy face, whatever your scale is, and then what the equivalent is. And so we'll be looking at that. Now, one thing to keep in mind, we have a lot of teachers that we affectionately in certification call hoppers. They go from non-public to public and back and forth, in-state, out-of-state. And so that may be something that's causing confusion. Depends on the certificate type that they have, will determine what we're looking for to renew it. And so if you ever have any questions about moving a teacher from one type of certificate to the other, feel free to schedule office hours. We'll be happy to take your call and walk you through exactly how it needs to be submitted, in our portal so that it doesn't get kicked back. Any other questions?
Any further discussion?
The PL1 and PL2, that is not going to, when is that going to be issued through like I Teach and
So that's proposed policy right now. That'll go to Bessie August the 16th, 17th, something like that. And so depending on if it's approved or not will determine when we start that. My recommendation for you right now is if you have a candidate that needs a certificate for the start of the school year, if it's from iTeach, for example, the PL2, then you all as the employing school system would go ahead and submit that application on their behalf if they need it for the start of school, because Bessie's not until about 2 weeks into the school year.
And the policy change also has to go through the notice of intent process, so it's not applicable until about 3 months.
Right.
After Bessie
Right.
approves it.
We are proposing it to be emergency rule, but again, that will be whether or not they approve it as emergency rule. It's a huge package, so it all depends. Any other questions?
Thank you, Kristen. All right, any further discussion? Any opposition? Okay, moving on. 6.2, consideration of an update regarding fast-forward pathways for the top university and Jumpstart. I need a motion. Mr. Carroll, second. Suzanne.
Good morning, everyone. Unfortunately, I won't be moving as fast up here as my colleagues. I started my marathon training program, and unfortunately, my mind thought I was 18 or 19 years old, like when I was in Army basic training 30 years ago, but my body didn't agree, so I'm struggling with some ankle issues right now. But I did, when the agenda was being made today, I did want to make sure that I got in front of you for a couple of reasons. And that being, one is to keep you up to date on graduation requirements. Because as we've discussed before, you're well aware that your students are eligible to graduate with one of 2 diplomas right now. A Tufts University diploma, which fully aligns with the Tufts scholarship, and a Jumpstart career diploma. And what occurred over the spring was we have added some additional career diploma fast forward, what we would call pathways. And what makes that relevant is that for those students that are participating on the Jumpstart Career Diploma pathway, they have to have 9 CTE courses. And what we have done is we have worked with school systems over the course of this spring to see how can we bring in associate degree options. And for a Jumpstart student, that would be like an applied science associate degree. How can we bring in an associate degree option for them, yet still meet the high school graduation requirements? So when you hear the term fast forward, it means really 2 things. That we have brought forward to Bessie and said, here are some associate degree opportunities for students. And when they take this sequence of courses as part of their associate's degree, it will meet the graduation requirements for a career diploma. We have also done the same thing for some TOPS University diploma pathways, where they have partnered with their local community and technical college systems, or LSU UNIS, and the board adopted those in June. And so there's 39 total pathways. I think of a pathway as a set of course progressions. As an example, I believe Ms. Stephanie Markham, who works with this on our team, she has shared one of these 39. And this is a Delgado, correct, it's the Delgado one, right? This is a Delgado cloud computing pathway. So if you're in the New Orleans region and you wanted a student to pursue give them an opportunity to pursue an associate's degree and simultaneously meet the high school graduation requirements for a career diploma in this instance, this pathway would validate that they could do that, and all the coursework would meet the requirements. So the board approved these pathways and these new course sequences to get to both your diploma and an associate's degree in June. And where we are now in the department is some of these courses didn't have a course title, didn't have a course code in our system. So for instance, when your student takes U.S. history and you put it in a transcript system, it's got a 6-digit code. We don't have a 6-digit code for Linux computing. We don't have a 6-digit code for cloud computing because these are all new. So right now what we're doing is the board approved the course titles so that they'll meet graduation requirements. The universities or community and technical colleges said they'll meet the college requirements. We're now going in and creating course codes for these. And what we're going to be doing in August, and I'll work to make sure it gets in the newsletter that you see, but we're going to do a webinar. And we're going to share with school systems saying, look, here's a first set of some pilot associate degree opportunities for you, where you can enroll, take these courses, and they'll meet high school graduation requirements, and they'll meet associate's degree requirements. And what's a little unique about them is I'll give the Delta region up in northeast Louisiana. One of their courses that they proposed was mathematics for electricians. And so that will meet a math requirement for a career diploma student. So I want to make you aware of that was one. You'll see in the deck, and look, there's 39 of these, I'm not going to rush through all 39, but you'll see in the deck, we've highlighted in each region, and what defines a region is your regional labor market area. But in each region, you'll see, like this is the New Orleans region. In region 1, these were the pathways that were approved with a concentration of courses in these specific areas that would meet those associate's degree requirements. And then again, we have Region 2 partner with North Shore, Baton Rouge Community College. Region 3, what we have in this particular region, and this is like an associate's degree that's aligned to a TOPS University student. So I want to emphasize that we also have some for if I'm TOPS University, which many of your students are on TOPS University pathways. But if I'm in the Lafayette, if I'm in the Houma, Thibodaux, Lafourche area, and I want to have my student participate in the Fast Forward program to get them an opportunity to not only get their high school diploma, but to get an associate's degree, a transfer degree at that from Fletcher, that opportunity is available. And we have mapped those courses out. It really took about 4 to 6 months to map these courses out. But you can be assured that they'll meet the high school graduation requirements, and they'll be meeting the requirements for and associate's degree. So we've outlined those for all of the 8 regions for you to let you which know pathways were created. We're getting all the course codes for these. We'll be posting them online. We envision next year, the 21-22 school year, to be a very, very early pilot year where some systems will adopt this, figure out how they want to implement this, should they want to offer this dual high school degree opportunity. So I wanted to make sure you knew that this is out there, it's available. The department is creating these course codes. We'll be having a kickoff webinar in August to share this information. So that's one thing about graduation requirements. The other one I'll plug in Ethan went through a laundry list of things that passed in the legislative session. Just so you know, there was legislation passed that allows for the African American history class to count as a 4th social studies requirement for our top university students. We will be bringing that to the board in August to count for a 4th social studies requirement. So we'll have these fast forward pathways that meet graduation requirements. We'll also bring forward that class so that we fully align with TOPS.
You're talking about 22, 23?
All of these, these will be in effect for graduates actually beginning in 22. So we're in 21. So theoretically, a graduate to graduate and meet the requirements of these in 22. It will be the same principle for African American history to meet the graduation requirement. It's actually based on when you were incoming freshman in 1450. Any incoming freshman will go retro to that. We have those. And then, what other questions do you have? Okay, I'm on the floor. Any other high school questions? Policy? Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Any opposition? Okay, our next one is update regarding submission timeline. Max, you're up again. I need a motion to receive. Mr. Carroll, Dr. Mel, second.
All right. Again, Max Day, non-travel Max. Education. You guys already saw your email about travel.
Sister Carol.
But yes, this should be pretty quick. In line with kind of revisiting our policies, our practices, I wanted to show you guys, give you a little preview of what this fall is going to look like. One of the things that we are doing to make sure that we are correcting upon what we've done in the past is to really try to be more intentional with our planning, actually take more of a step back, equip schools with a year-long view of what we need from schools to be able to participate and to get all the administrative work done to make sure that we can still sustain the program. So there's like an internal systems pathway of work that focuses really around our reporting calendar. There's also work that we're going to be doing around the application itself. How are we going to make this better for the next round? And then also you'll see in a second we'll talk about our data systems. And then just making sure that we are really trying to bring in the non-public schools and our scholarship participating schools into the fold more than we have in the past. Examples, Teacher Leader Summit, right? Okay, so what's important for you guys to see here is one, that we are planning for next year. All of the stuff in blue is applicable to 22, 23, starting earlier this year to make sure that we have a better handle on our notices of intent, that we are able to get some of our data collected earlier, especially with our tuition and fees, so we can maximize the funding that we do have to incorporate more seats where available. But really all of this is really just to make sure that you guys know we are prioritizing this. We have some steps laid out. We are really looking forward to our August conversation with the non-public schools where we'll be rolling out the things we talked about, this reporting calendar, some of our onboarding for new schools, some of our systems training. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, just another question. In the past, the Department of Education notified the families that they were accepted to a scholarship program,
Yes.
and then we had to come behind that to make contact with those families.
Okay.
Is that going to continue? Because there was a real lag time in that this summer.
For this next round of placement or for next
For
year?
this next round or for thus going forward?
We're looking at all of those systems and processes again, but like, just to make sure I understand the question, where does kind of the burden lie as far as follow-up after a placement has been made? That's the question?
Yes,
Okay.
because we got notification around the same time, but we weren't able to reach out to the family and say, okay, this is what you need to do, come blah, 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 let's do this. We had to wait until you all
Yes.
made the notification, and then it was up to them to make contact with us, and there's something not quite good with that.
Yes.
In the summer, especially.
Can you just make sure that we have that written down, what Sister Carol said, deep direct, just so that we can build that into our conversation?
Given the timeline, this is what we experienced, okay, in the past. The Department of Education contacted the family to tell them they did in fact receive this Louisiana scholarship, okay? And then after they make notification, then it's up to the family to make notification back to the school. Whereas, the school needs to have the same time frame to reach out to that family, especially in the summer, because our hours are so modified. Those need to go hand in hand.
Okay. Okay.
And I understand why the Department of Education needs to notify first, but following that, we need to be able to get involved quicker.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Any questions on just some of the kind of important milestones coming up this fall? Again, more of an FYI, just know that we're thinking about this, we're trying to intentionally plan, and maybe try to move you guys in if we need some help with some of these things. Yes, ma'am?
I don't know if you can answer this, but we have never received confirmation whether or not the test scores from 2021 will be used to sanction or not schools for 21, 22.
Right.
Will the test scores count for sanctioning or not? How does that, do we have an answer?
We do not have an answer yet at this point. I think we're still working through accountability with our accountability commission, and looking at the role that that's going to play in the fall.
Sir, you just said we're all starting over at ground zero.
Yeah, Ethan said that we're all starting fresh, and that's so, it's confusing. We're all starting fresh in 21, 22. And if you have 3 consecutive years of sanctioning, then you will not be allowed to participate in the program. So I'm just confused because we never received any clarification on whether or not last year's test scores will.
Yeah. So I think it's like 2 different things, right? One, will last year's test scores be used in these sanctioning decisions? But then the second part was, what is the impact of this legislation, and do we like wipe the slate clean and start over? I don't know the answer to that, but we can find out. In terms of like what we're using for accountability, I think that's a larger question agency-wide that we're still working through and not that answer yet.
So Dr. Houston, I don't think we're not wiping the slate clean in the sense that if you have 2 years of unsuccessful, then we're going to start you over at 0. But I think there's a little bit of confusion of what Ethan was saying. So we're not wiping the slate clean per se, but we are starting a new process. The law says we can't wipe those, if you have a year or 2 of unsuccessful performance off of the books, and it starts you over at 21, 22 with a true clean slate. I don't know if that's making sense.
It does not make sense.
It
just confused me even more.
I do feel though that we could incorporate this, get some clarity and incorporate this either into an upcoming conversation or our monthly calls or something.
What would not be fair is you change the rules in the middle of the game, and then our schools pay a very hefty price because you change the rules in the middle of the game. If you are going to implement, we're going to move forward with 280, House Bill 280,
Right.
we should start clean, fresh slate, because this is a completely new policy and a huge and significant change that could, like I said, effectively close schools. So if we're starting, we should be starting fresh, I guess is what I'm saying, if we're going to move forward with the 3 consecutive years of not meeting the requirements.
Yeah, I agree. We're not trying to like move the goalposts.
Right, that's what it feels
We
like
just need to
if
get
we're not
clarity.
starting over.
Well, I'm not sure, I haven't gotten the full answer regarding testing in the public schools last year, but if their testing is similar to what we endured last year, is that we had students out on virtual so much. We had students who were in and out because of virtual and all this. I don't know how an active educator could even determine last year's test scores as being valid especially if they compare them to when they were in the normal year, for example. I think that playing field must be leveled, because because public school started 2 weeks after us, many places, they didn't have a good year last year either, so.
And the quarantine, I mean, kids were out 2 weeks, several times, 2 weeks at a time, it was a lot. And you try with virtual,
And
but,
teachers, yeah.
yeah, and teachers too, we had teachers out.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't gonna satisfy you right now, and this question here, but like,
Try.
I will. I mean, know that we understand, like, we live this with you guys, like, we are still trying to understand the role that those test scores will play this fall in a number of different decisions. And we just don't have that clarity yet, but we're working on it, and we should know soon.
And you'll bring it back to September?
I don't know.
Can we get some clarification before September? I mean, the sooner we know, the better.
Yes.
Even if it's just in one.
We can follow up with either clarification now, or when we can get you some clarification and why it'll take a few minutes, if that's the case. All right. Reply to this. Mentioned EdLink. EdLink is what we are hoping is going to be the solution to a lot of our problems with our application, with our student reporting, with our data. But to level set some expectations, EdLink is a new data warehouse that we are using department-wide. We're rolling it out in certain phases. Certain things have to be prioritized over others. A number of different reasons. We are looking at scholarship integration and non-public school integration, fully integrated for this application process, about 2 years out. So what that means for us is that we're in a short-term solution for this upcoming year, right, laying some of that groundwork, but then transitioning to that EdLink ops, hopefully, this next cycle, but the year after. So we do believe that EdLink is going to be extremely helpful. It would remove a couple of the systems that we're currently using, namely the FTP site that I feel like everybody absolutely hates. I hate it as well. It's not user-friendly, it makes no sense. But we need it for a couple of reasons. That will replace EdLink. Also, it'll help you guys submit your quarterly reports. It'll help with financial reasons. Like basically, it's going to reduce a lot of vulnerabilities and a lot of data issues by storing this information all in one place. Key takeaway here is we're about 2 years out from that. So in the meantime, in addition to these systems that we're building, we're also looking at that short-term solution with one app, with us, with our program, and with the tech systems that we kind of inherited and need to update. This, lastly, again, just is another moment for us to say in the past, we realized that we have not brought this group and these group of schools into the fold as much as possible. Namely, when I came on, we were working through Teacher Leader Summit, and I was just a little surprised as how we handled that. And so I think moving forward, we want to make sure that we have more focused content for this group. We want to make sure that the registration is equitable in those that it has in the past. In addition to some of those onboarding processes we talked about, making sure that we have connections here at the department, so there's just more like a two-way street. So those are the things that we are working on. Also, continuing to staff our team. Welcome, Shauna. And then these last two are super quick. We need that updated contact information. That's all of that information is in the newsletter. It's in the upcoming calls. We have to start there. Otherwise, we can't go anywhere. Other than that, we also are revamping our newsletters. We're revamping our calls to make the information much more streamlined and applicable to non-public schools. So it's not more just like a carbon copy of the weekly systems newsletter. We want to scrub it, make it very applicable to you guys so that hopefully we get those click rates up a little bit. It becomes a real source of information for you guys and really helps us kind of take out a couple of steps in the middle. So that is our update on communication structures and other things we're trying to put in place this fall. I feel like I hit that a little bit earlier, and then here again, I'll pause now. Any other questions about this or anything else?
They had submitted a required services question about submissions, and it was supposed to be added to this item. Were you part of that conversation?
I was not.
Okay.
I did have just a statement about the communications, just to make sure. The non-public newsletter, and there's another systems newsletter, and sometimes the dates that are very specific
that we need to be on, they're not in the same places, and it's kind of a, it's kind of a seeking game to figure out what dates apply to us and which ones don't. So the best, the
Right.
more concise that can be, that's really important.
Okay. Yeah, and you said it better than I did, but like for our newsletter, actually going through and scrubbing it
Right.
directly applicable to you guys, instead of making you play that, not guessing game.
And receiving it timely sometimes.
Right, sometimes the.
Like, the meeting was at 3, we got it at 4:30.
Right,
It's too
correct.
late. So that would be helpful.
Just with our newsletter, most of the dates for non-public, when we put them in there, they are highlighted. And so we have started moving them to the front of the newsletter so that you can see it automatically once you click on the link to look at it. Also, our non-public call is tomorrow at 2. So we have some very, very good information that's coming out. So make sure you tune in because, we've been trying to make sure that everything that you all may need is right there at your fingertips.
Any further discussion? Any opposition? Thank you very much.
Thank y'all.
When you get that email from Sister Carol, just throw it in the trash. About mileage, about where we're seeing. Okay, Daphne, you only have 15 minutes because it's almost 12 o'clock. I need a motion to receive the update report by Ms. Daphne. Lisa, second, Dr. Bell. Unless you're treating us all to lunch.
Hello, everybody. It's great to see you. Very quickly, we will look at the ombudsman's report. Just a few reminders and clarifications. As you know, the GER ended on May 24th. I did get some calls, and that is the reason it is there, because I just wanted to clarify that with everybody. Also, another question that kept coming in was, what happens to the allocations if they were not expended or obligated? Do they go back to the LEA? No, they do not. Those funds did not go back to LEAs. That's going to be dealt with on the SEA state level. Now, your ESSER funds continue, and as you know, they are still a part of the Strong Start application, and that ends September 30th of 22. But you're not going to have to redo everything again because that application is on a continuation basis. But if the LEA asks you to update your needs assessment, or they may say, hey, can you just do a new needs assessment, please cooperate with them on that, have the schools cooperate, because that's going to help them be sure that what's in their applications for the upcoming school year is heard. So some may just say, hey, update the one you have already. Some may say, hey, let's do one for 21-22. Whichever case, just have them to follow through on that. Any questions? Looking at professional development opportunities. This is always something that we look at, and not only the schools, even on the diocesan level, independent private school levels, what can we do? Where is something? What's going on? So one of the things that I did was look to see what was kind of local, what was close by. Well, first of all, our national conference, we used to call it the Title I Conference, NASPA, and now ESEA Conference, is going to be in New Orleans this year. And you may say, well, isn't that more geared toward public schools? Not necessarily. There are great sessions there. Awesome consultants talking about a variety of instructional strategies, evidence-based practices, just information on leadership, as well as looking at how to address learning loss. So many great things, and again, there is a large section, or pretty decent sized section, on private schools. Some of us have applied to present. We don't know anything about that yet, but we do know that one of the panels for the ombudsman will probably be there, and I'll be participating on that and maybe calling on some of you to give some input. Because one of the things that we want to stress is this, and Louisiana, again, is in the forefront. The relationship between LEAs and our private schools. And that is something that we have still been doing a good job at in terms of reducing and not having the complaints be there informal or formal. Mediation is very, very important. Getting to the table, discussing things, working it out is something that you do very, very well. And so we want to continue that. The CCAL Fall Education Conference is actually for early childhood, but your kindergarten and first grade teachers would enjoy those sessions because it really does get into the curriculum for early childhood education. Teach Your Heart Out Conference was one that I found that was right in New Orleans, as well as the International Conference for Early Childhood is going to be there. Now, NCTM, which was one of my favorites back in the day, as well as the Science Conference, is going to be in Atlanta, so that's not that far away. And as you see, the Science Conference is in Los Angeles, and the International Literacy Association Conference is in Indianapolis. But more than anything, sometimes it's just time for us to put our thinking caps on, step out the box, do some things differently, and we can pull allocations and create your own conferences right here among what you have. I am willing to support you to do that. There are a wealth of companies and consultants who would be very happy to participate to help us with doing that. Any questions?
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you, as always. You are out of time.
Any opposition? Motion carries. Well, now we go back to our domains and figure out what we're going to do to start the new year. Oh, excuse me, after they adjourn. Our next meeting in September is on the 21st of September. So thanks to all the people from the department. We appreciate all that you do for us, and I know sometimes we're thorn your sides, but just bear with us. We'll pray for you in the meantime. Meeting adjourned. Have a safe trip home.
So be it.